Welcome to Habitual Excellence, presented by Value Capture. This podcast and our firm is all about helping you and your organization achieve habitual excellence via one unifying focus, one value-based structure, and one performance system. In other words, it's about helping you capture dramatically more value through achieving perfect care and perfect safety for patients and staff. To learn more about Value Capture and our services, visit www.valuecapturellc.com.
Hi, welcome listeners. I'm Ken Segel. I'm CEO of Value Capture and host of the Habitual Excellence podcast, where we talk to leaders who have really led with a leadership framework and the principles of habitual excellence and help their healthcare organizations create amazing results with them that really serve as an example to others. Both inspiration and also profound learnings. And our guest today certainly fits in that category, Dr. Paul DeChant. Paul is known lately as one of really the world's experts, and I would say most helpful experts on understanding the challenge and the deep problem of physician burnout, how to think about it correctly, and what we can do about it, and has helped a lot of places address this problem at root causes. So Paul, we're grateful to have you. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Ken, it's great to be here. I really appreciate it. And especially working with Value Capture. I just have so much respect for Value Capture's approach to making workplaces better places to work.
Well, thanks, Paul, and it's mutual, as you know. And more about your background in a second. I want to say we're going to today dive deep into an area Paul has been thinking a lot about lately, which is the dimension of burnout that relates to cynicism and why it's such a tough problem, where it comes from, and what we can do about it. And I think our listeners are probably already resonating with that a little bit. But we're also going to tell you right now, and we'll tell you again at the end, that we have an upcoming opportunity to learn more from Paul about these ideas and others who are working to make things better at the Value Capture Enduring Excellence Seminar for CEOs and other C-suite execs in charge of operations, which is going to be on October 17th at the University of Virginia Health System, October 17th and 18th. And as the time you're hearing this, there may still be a few slots. It's a small seminar, but a powerful one. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So with that as a framing, let's get to it. Paul is an expert on physician burnout, and as his standing in the field comes from a 25-year career of practicing family medicine, he moved up the ranks of management at both Sutter Health and Geisinger, and where he really entered my consciousness in a profound and inspiring way was as the CEO of the Sutter Gould Medical Foundation, one of California's large multi-specialty physician practice groups, where he applied the framework that we share in common to really remarkable results, moving everything that mattered from middle of the pack to top of the pack, and recognized externally, including Consumer Reports, for being best in California and really top ranked stuff. And by the way, that includes financial performance improvement, et cetera. And as he's continued to think about how he can make the biggest difference, and in the area of physician burnout, he's co-authored a book, Preventing Physician Burnout, Curing the Chaos and Returning Joy to Patient Care, and been a very practical and research-based guide to making things better. So, Paul, I just want people to know that you speak from a rich and strong base of experience to this issue as you join us.
Well, thank you, Ken. That was a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything else about your checkered past that you'd like to add before we get started here?
I've moved a fair amount in my career, and I was at Sutter Health, with Palo Alto Medical Foundation, Sutter Health initially out of residency. I then spent 8 years in Breckenridge, Colorado, actually as a small town family doctor and the ER doc at the base of the ski hill. And despite thinking I wouldn't be doing much administrative work there, merged 5 small groups together into a moderate-sized group there as well. So there's something about the leadership and administration that I just can't get out of my system, no matter where I seem to be.
I had learned that about you relatively recently, your roots at the ski hill in Breckenridge. And for those that don't know, Breckenridge is both an idyllic place and at high elevation. And the fact that Paul would want to get into leadership and do it from that place adds to your legend, Paul. So thanks for adding those important notes. So let's just start because physician burnout is one of those topics we hear a lot about, and there's a lot of labels getting thrown around and a lot of mini frameworks and things. But again, you have such depth on it. Can you just give a brief overview of how to think about the challenge sort of correctly and accurately, so that we can make the right diagnosis, if you will, and begin our solution attempt from a sound basis?
Yeah, and I would just start out saying that what we talk about when I talk about physician burnout applies equally to nursing and most other clinician roles as well. So as anyone listening to this will see as we go through this, but one of the premises I like to start with is the fact that physicians, nearly all clinicians, should have some of the best jobs in the world. I mean, where else do people get a job where their patients will come to them and share intimate secrets they won't tell anybody else because they trust that person to care for them, or they let us do things like stick them with needles, do procedures that save lives or minimize suffering. And we get to mentor young people preparing to become our colleagues, and we get to work on innovation and research to make healthcare better. There's so many opportunities for professional fulfillment in these professions, and yet over half of us are burned out. And it's because we're spending only a third of our time on that meaningful work, and 2/3 of the time is absolutely wasted on administrivia, things like typing data into the electronic medical record, fighting about a prior authorization, running all over the clinic or the hospital trying to find equipment or staff or other help that we need. And it's really not necessary. As things have evolved, they just evolved this way. But when we make a conscious effort to change that, we really can drive significant change.
Yeah, thanks. And I love the framing of they should be the best jobs, but because we've sort of let at least 2/3 of the time become filled with sort of problems and non-value added kinds of things, they aren't. And I take it that those are that 2/3 is really the main driver of burnout for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because so much emphasis, certainly 10 years ago, and even to this day, is put on helping clinicians be more resilient.
Yeah.
Building that internal capacity to cope with the external challenge. But in reality, most clinicians are pretty darn resilient. You couldn't get through med school and residency without that. You couldn't do the things that nurses have to do if they weren't resilient. The problem is not a lack of resilience. When we think about burnout properly, burnout's the manifestation in an individual of dysfunction in that person's workplace.
Right.
And the World Health Organization says as much in ICD-11, describing what burnout actually is as an occupational phenomenon. And we know it has these three dimensions of exhaustion and cynicism and that sense of inefficacy. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Christina Masloch, one of the original researchers in burnout who identified these. I've known her now for a number of years. And along with identifying those dimensions, she and her colleague, Michael Leiter, identified 6 drivers of burnout and showed the connection between those drivers and the manifestations. And that's really, understanding that has been, as I learned those, I realized that those tied right into approaches to improvement that are familiar to us when we're doing lean right, where we start with deep respect for people, and then we empower people to fix the challenges that they're facing.
Paul, thanks. And in that, you've really, there are 2 related aspects that you're highlighting that have really spoken to me in your work and resonate with us in our work, and where we are able to help health system leaders make things better. And that's really, as you just said, at root, this is not a problem of individual resilience, and it's not about giving individuals more resilient skills. It's a problem of the workplace. And because it's a problem of the workplace, it means it's a leadership challenge and problem, and that leaders can make it better. Every level, from the CEO to the CMO to the COO to the CNO to the board of directors, and every level down to the floors. So inspired by that, and I think it's quite hopeful. And what I'm hoping today, I know you've been giving a lot of thought to one of these dimensions, cynicism. And when we go around the country supporting leaders to try to, recreate, in many cases, winning cultures supported by being able to get those frontline caregivers what they need when they need it every time, and the systems to support that, and the leadership framework to support it. We hear a lot about, a lot of our clinicians and others have gotten very cynical, and it's a challenge. And it will be sometimes self-admitted. So can you sketch out this dimension of cynicism a little bit, and where it comes from, why it's destructive once it sets in, and so we can begin to think about what to do about it?
Oh, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to step back first and look at not cynicism, but the exhaustion, simply because it relates so directly to the cynicism.
Yeah.
That exhaustion comes from work overload. And that's the first driver of burnout that Maslow and Leiter identified. And when we think about what I just described as spending only 1/3 of a clinician's time on meaningful work that brings true value, 2/3 of the time is wasted on this administrivia. And the opportunity for many, I practiced through the pre-EHR era. I was at Geisinger when we went live with Epic. I invested tremendous amount of my time trying to help Epic get better, use it more effectively in our clinics. Same thing at Sutter Health. And we've struggled. We made good progress, but I think we're right now at an inflection point as AI really starts to demonstrate some value, that if we incorporate it properly, using value stream analysis approaches to make sure we're maximizing the value of AI, that we actually have the opportunity to flip that ratio of 1/3 time meaningful to 2/3 administrivia. We could flip that and imagine if we doubled the time that clinicians were doing meaningful work, what that would do to improve not only work-life balance for the clinicians, but capacity in our systems, the ability to actually focus more deeply on the patients while we're caring for them, to open up access, to drive productivity. It can really address so many of the challenges. But doing that is going to require leaders that are willing to first understand this and then commit to investing in those improvement processes.
Right.
And that's the big challenge as we see it, is leaders, they're starting to understand this. They're willing to invest in new approaches with ambient technology to record a visit and things like that, to some degree. But they all in comprehensively looking at what happens with workflows and investing in that takes leaders who understand operations at a much deeper level. And leaders have a challenge these days as well, because there are so many factors coming at leaders, not only new technology, but then the fear of ransomware. In addition to that, there's all of the regulatory issues that are coming in, challenges with insurance companies, changes in demographics in the community, competitors rearing their heads in the community, private equity coming in, so many different challenges that senior leaders have to focus on. But if they lose sight of that most important service that the organization provides, and maybe not lose sight of it, but lose understanding of the need to commit to that, that's where physicians and nurses on the front line look at it and can get pretty cynical. The cynicism is driven by 5 other drivers of burnout. The first is a lack of control, which, as clinicians, people have worked hard to get the training they need so they can take control in an emergency. People want us to do that, but there's so many ways we should have some control that we don't. As a family doctor practicing for 25 years, I wanted every day to have the control and the empowerment to fix what was wrong in my office. But quite often, it was very challenging to find that. The next driver is insufficient recognition and reward. In fact, that control is one of those intangible rewards we look for when we join the profession.
Right.
And there's others, there's commitment to just professional appreciation, and even more so community. The doctors and nurses and others were fun to hang out with, but we have less and less opportunity to connect with each other.
Right.
And breakdown of community is that next driver.
So thanks. And two major dimensions here, the exhaustion and the cynicism. And exhaustion gets a lot better if we address the workflows and return ourselves to sort of the operating system excellence and work system focus as leaders. And we see those profound changes happen when we get back there. And by the way, it frees up leader time too to focus on those other challenges when things get flowing in support of the frontline folks in a better way, in a much more efficient way, which is great. But you're now highlighting some other drivers of the second dimension of cynicism that are this mix of social, technical, control, all these things, which I think resonate for all of us emotionally as we think about it. And share a little bit more about when cynicism is in place, why it's destructive, what is it preventing us from doing, and why has it become a focus for your thinking and work right now?
Yeah. Well, one of the big challenges with cynicism is that it's kind of fun to be cynical. Most of the people who are great cynics, they're very smart. They see what's going on.
Sure.
They can point out the challenges. And people, when that happens, for people who haven't already seen that or realized it, it validates for them some of the feelings they're having. So it's pretty easy, if you're smart, to be a pretty good cynic.
Right.
But that then stops your ability to move forward if we just end at cynicism and celebrate the cynicism. The other two components that drive cynicism are absence of fairness and values conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And when you combine those with the issues around community and recognition and control, you just have this toxic stew that can paralyze people. And most cynics they themselves, especially if they're vocal, can appear to be gaining some power and some control. But in general, when people are in that cynical state, it's hard to see a way out, and it's easy to become a victim. And then it's really hard to make an improvement from there. And this is where leaders have the opportunity, a huge opportunity, because those 5 drivers of control, reward, community, fairness, and values, they have all to do with how you lead or manage. Whether you're leading or managing a team as small as 2 or 3 people, or as large as a system with 20 or 30,000 employees, if you lead in a way that exacerbate those drivers of cynicism, then you are going to have a negative and toxic culture in your organization. But if you lead in the opposite way, and there are ways to do this very effectively, where we empower people on the front lines and align them around enterprise-wide success. And when we pull that together, we get an amazing engagement, better than almost any other approach to enhancing engagement that I know of.
So, Paul, say more about this, about what leaders can do, because I can imagine the audience saying, I try to align people. Cynicism is in my way today. Give a little more detail about the strategies that you have seen be successful in the sort of package of strategies as a framework that you're seeing success with and recommend to leaders to break through what's set in place here.
Yeah, thanks. I really enjoy talking about this, because I think back to, like I said, as a family doctor, every day in my office, I wanted the empowerment to fix things.
Yeah.
But then I became CEO of this 300 physician group. And the thought of all 300 doctors independently, autonomously empowered to do what they thought they needed to do to fix stuff scared me, because I thought we could fall apart from entropy. And it was at a time right at the depths of the last Great Recession, 2009. We were $9 million in the hole and negative 3% margin. The pressure to turn that around rapidly was intense. And it was very tempting to go into a micromanagement mode, to just demand that people did more, demand that they cut expenses, demand that they increase productivity. And it might have worked in the short run, but I knew it wouldn't work in the long run. I knew it wouldn't have worked for me when I was a doc. And I wanted to make sure we had long-term, strong relationships we could build on. So instead, we found a way to give people empowerment to solve their local problems, but to align everyone around the global issues for our organization. And that alignment came from really understanding metrics and values. Every organization has a value statements, and a lot of people talk about how they're up on the walls, but you don't see them in the hall, little catchphrases like that. But they truly are important. They're what motivate us, particularly in our healthcare professions. And we all have scorecards and that with all these metrics on them. The opportunity to connect those values that are meaningful to us, that bring meaning to our work, and the metrics that demonstrate our commitment to and performance to improve on those values is something that if we think through it intentionally and educate our management teams and ultimately our front lines about how that works and why it's important, it can make a huge difference. And this really gets into the whole lean management system.
Yeah.
But when we have values that we're tracking that are metrics we're tracking, process metrics on the front line that the frontline teams have control over, and that they can see how those connect to the system metric performance, which are outcome metrics, and then have the opportunity to identify what are they performing, how are their outcome metrics performing, where do they have opportunity to improve, can they use problem solving techniques from lean to improve that performance. Then they get a sense of fulfillment like, yes, we are actually making a difference in patient satisfaction because of the way we greet people every time, or we're improving safety because of the standard of work approach we take to these risky procedures. And that gets reinforced, it gets recognized and appreciated. And then we build community around that. People feel like there is a level of fairness here because we see that happening across all the units in the hospital. And it aligns with our values. We really specifically address those drivers of burnout through the lean management system. And for that to work, obviously, we need senior leadership out there explaining it, proselytizing for it, becoming the people, really helping the frontline people understand why we're doing what we're doing and how well we are doing it.
Thanks, Paul. All music to our ears, of course. And in doing that, the proselytizing and the being out there, there's something also about showing fundamental respect for the work and for the perspective of those who are on the front lines and really everybody in the organization. So can you talk a little bit about the link to some of those fundamental values being made real every day for everybody?
Yeah. Well, certainly the whole concept of leaders getting out to where the work is being done, going to the Gemba, is absolutely vital. And depending on the level in the organization that a leader is, it can become harder and harder to do that these days.
Yeah.
As systems get larger, there's been so many mergers and acquisitions, and people in the C-suite of these large, complex organizations may not even know where all their locations are, let alone know the people in the organization in any level of personal knowledge. But still, finding time to go and be where the operations are, to see and witness the challenges that clinicians have while they're trying to deliver care to the patients, which is what we exist for, makes a world of difference. In the olden days, more leaders were clinicians in their origin, and so they understand things more organically. As things have gotten more complex, many leaders really don't have a clinical background. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't, as non-clinical backgrounded leaders, not be going out to the front lines. In fact, it's even more imperative to truly understand what the challenge, see those frustrations, see the barriers to care, get motivated to make a bigger difference as a result, and build relationships with their clinicians, because as a result of all of this, one of the biggest challenges actually is a significant level of distrust and disrespect mutually between senior leaders and frontline clinicians. And it doesn't need to be that way. And there are ways that we can work that can really make a difference there.
And I think everybody understands the strategic dead weight and really negative weight that creates in the organization at times when we have to adapt and move to create more and more value for our customers, not less, and not be at each other's throats, but be aligned in doing important work and accomplishing important things together. Paul, as you talk, I think back to our founding chair, Paul O'Neill, and his work at Alcoa outside of healthcare, and many of the changes we've been able to be a part of. And in every case, the leaders are sort of consciously and leading with strength around all the ideas and systems you're talking about, but also really consciously making themselves vulnerable to everybody in the organization, including those who are cynical about the current state, to ask them to buy in, to say, I can't do this, for you, or, and it's a big challenge, but we can only do it together, and ask people to give their hearts and minds, and then show by their own actions that they're there to support and show respect and invite everybody in. So what you say resonates a lot. So Paul, we could talk about this all day. You and I can go for hours on this stuff, but we are going to have the chance to be together in a little over a month, maybe about a month by the time this airs, in Virginia at the Enduring Excellence CEO seminar, where folks will have a chance to hear more from you about this and see some really good places, site visit to UVA itself, leaders from Prisma Health, which is doing remarkable things with these frameworks, and others. For those that are going to join and will get the chance to hear you, what more can they expect? Why should they give their time and treasure to be with us in Charlottesville?
Oh, well, I think, overall, I mean, certainly the fantastic opportunity to hear me talk more is something everybody should want. But realizing that it's a combination of deep thought, learning from experts, talking with peers, and
Right.
seeing the work as it's been done, putting all those together into one visit really creates so much opportunity for deeper insights. Every time I've done, whether it's as a participant or as a contributor to one of these visits, it's been hugely impactful for me.
Yeah, it's amazing how powerful leaders are as their own coaches when they take the time to step back from the daily pressures to take advantage of some of these opportunities to learn from others and think and reflect at a deeper level. So we see that uptick in not only impact by leaders, but also sort of whatever the opposite of burnout is for leaders, because it's energizing and positive and sustaining. So thank you for being a part of that.
Actually, that's a real quick, that's a great point. Burnout's not just for clinicians. The latest studies show that leaders are as burned out as the clinicians are. So we approach this with a deep sense of empathy for the leaders, that they are also struggling with these challenges.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because one of the real drivers that people mention to us about participating in our seminars and leader groups is that desire to get back sort of connected with each other and reflecting and supportive environments, echoing a lot of what you said are the sort of counter forces to what drives cynicism, where leaders themselves have gotten locked into some of those dimensions over many years. So great way to think about it and look at it. So Paul, however, you do more than just speak at conferences, what are other ways people can benefit from your wisdom and insight on this, and how can they find out more?
Oh, thanks. Well, I've got a website, pauldechantmd.com. I also partner with a retired hospital CEO, Bruce Cummings, who very like-minded, and together, a physician leader and a non-physician leader, we add to the scope of our services and understanding. Our organization is called Organizational Wellbeing Solutions. So we have a website named that as well that people can look to. I do offer coaching for rising leaders in health systems, and particularly physician leaders, because there's such a challenge in those roles as they grow. So if anyone's looking for help along those lines, certainly happy to offer that as well.
That's great. And as some of our transformation engagements, we're happy to access Paul as a senior advisor of great capability and impact as well. So, it's great that there's so many different ways people can access your expertise and services in support of doing the important things they're trying to do. So
And
for folks,
just
go ahead.
real quick, if anybody's watching this, if they would like a copy of the book, I'm happy to sign it and send it to you. If you just email me your mailing address, I'm more than happy to do that. So I'll put that out there as well.
Terrific, Paul. And we'll make sure people have your email address. I'm sure they can access it from your website as well, but thank you very much. And for those that are interested in more information on the Enduring Excellence seminar coming up in October 17th and 18th, there may be a few more slots. You can find that information on our website, valuecapturellc.com/events, or just search for it. It won't be hard to find. I want to thank our audience for being with us today, as always, and participating in the learning. Thank you for your comments and that you share back with us. And Dr. Sean, I'd like to thank you again for coming on and sharing some of your latest work and deep thinking about cynicism and the challenge of clinician burnout, not just clinician and leader burnout as well, not just physician burnout. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure to get together. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Habitual Excellence, presented by Value Capture. We hope you'll subscribe to the podcast, and please also rate and review it in your favorite podcast directory or app. To learn more about Value Capture and how we can help your organization on this journey to habitual excellence, visit our website at www.valuecapturellc.com.